Triumph Gold is a company that's in the Yukon. We took control of it in 2015 after being involved as an investor in 2006 from the original IPO. Since we took control of it in 2016, we decided to take a long-term view of the project because it had a substantial resource that was low grade. And what that meant is that we offered what we thought was a very leveraged opportunity in the gold market. The share price was down to pennies, and we knew we had something that at a higher gold price, if we did virtually nothing, would be worth a lot more in a rising gold price, and that's when we would start working on the project. Things changed, and I'll show you why that is. When I show you the project in more specific detail. But that stock chart is basically, I think, our report card since we took control over the last 3 years. We've got, I think, a very good shareholder roster. Our largest shareholder is Gold Corp, which is now soon to be Gold Corp Newmont. I'll elaborate on that. But we've also got Zijin Mining out of China that's acquired a 10% interest in the project, as well as some institutions. Most notably, I want to mention Gold 2000, who was there day one when we came up with this concept, and Palisades Capital. When we took control, we've essentially changed absolutely everyone that was involved in the project. Myself, just like Mark was saying, I'm more the finance person. The real skill to this is acquiring the right technical people. And Paul Reynolds, our president, was instrumental in acquiring this, convincing Tony Bresci, who was our VP of Exploration, who really took this low-grade project that I mentioned that was a real call option at higher gold prices into something that's actually very relevant right now. Our project, we actually have 3 projects. We've only really talked about the Free Gold Mountain project, which I will go through in greater detail. It's a 200 square kilometer district-sized project up in the Yukon, located along the Big Creek Fault. This year we actually drilled one of the richest holes of the year. If you combined grade and width, as Jay mentioned, we drilled over 300 meters of a drill hole that was over 1.25 grams and 0.3% copper. But also we have 2 other projects that we, again, never really talked about. One is the Tad Toro project, which is located just north of where our property is, and I'll show you on the map in the next slide. The reason we're mentioning it now, there was work done back in 2014 on it, but the importance of it is its location, and its location is right along the soon-to-be upgraded casino trail that is being subsidized by our wonderful federal government. And why that's important is obviously when you open that up, you're going to see a lot of information coming out geologically with outcrops, et cetera, and that's also based on some historical work. And then most recently we've announced a project. I know the Golden Triangle is hot. We're not right in that triangle. We're part of that Tintina belt that goes down into the Golden Triangle, but and a Lucite Peak. And the reason we acquired that was Tony, our Vice President of Exploration, who got his PhD in economic geology, studied this area in the 15 years ago, and this property that he's been looking for 13 years came up, and he subsequently jumped on it. Our project, I mentioned, it's located in the Yukon. It's along the Big Creek Fault, where basically the larger projects in the Yukon are. Most notably, you've got the old Minto mine that just recently shut down. You've got the Casino deposit that Western Copper has. You've got the Clousa deposit that Rockstone has, or Rockhaven, I should say, the White Gold project, and then of course you've got the Coffee project that Gold Corp purchased in 2016 for $520 million. The one thing that really separates our project from a lot of these projects in remote areas is the infrastructure. I mentioned we're geologically located along the Big Creek Fault. Oops. We're also one of the few projects that actually has a government-maintained road that goes to our property and right through our property, and that has incredible benefits from the exploration standpoint. This is the first part of the federal government's initiative for infrastructure, where our project's actually going to be the benefit of an upgrade from the Klondike Highway to our property and through our property with a 2-lane 80-kilometer road. And supposedly that's going to be starting momentarily. When I said we have a district-sized project, it is. There is projects all over the area. It's a 200 square kilometer project. We've earned the rights to stay there till at least 2042 with the amount of work we've spent on it. And there's gold everywhere. There's different mineralizations, but the focus on the project and the company, based on what the previous management had been, was the northern part of the project, which is this Nucleus revenue area. And that's where the historical resource was. So rather than go out and look for new areas, we decided to just focus just outside of that area. And Nucleus and revenue, this is the Nucleus Deposit and the revenue. This is outlined in the black lines that sits on top of a giant, really intense 6 square kilometer soil anomaly. Work in 2016 when we got the property really showed evidence that the anomalies that were there, the resources were there, weren't a source of leakage. Basically, they weren't a function of just one-offs, but rather it was actually an in-situ hydrothermal system. And there's basically gold and mineralization everywhere. The top slide is the gold interpretation of that, and the bottom slide is the copper interpretation. And we're proud to say that subsequent drilling last summer in 2017, 2018, basically showed that everywhere within the anomaly there was mineralization. This is the same dish area that's outlined in the red area. That's about 6 kilometers long by 3 kilometers, so 18 kilometers roughly. The nucleus and the revenue are in the yellow, and then the green areas are what we drilled in 2017. And then confirmed with some previous drilling that was done in the 1960s. Our strategy or philosophy is based on the work we've done, that this sits on top of a much larger system. As Tony says, and some of our invested companies have said, these are your little 1,000,000 ounce or 500,000 ounce rabbits at surface that sit on top of what they think is a giant elephant. And I'll show you why we think that. The bottom part of this slide is the IP survey that was done in 2013. It only goes down 200 meters, and I'll explain what we've done recently and when we're going to announce that. Just to show the magnitude of this is what gave us the idea that we had something. The green blob that comes through in here that looks like a golf tee was a diatreme, and that's where a lot of the resource was. We had a thought that outside of that, based on the age of mineralization and some of the drill holes that weren't in the resource that we had something a little more substantial than just this little diatreme. That diatreme is a 75-million-year-old geological event that happened that went right through this, as I said, 105-year-old rock earlier on. And it's that younger rock that carries a mineralization. And when that event came up, we started to see these evidence that the high grade would be flowing within that giant porphyry. So we drilled this year, and we drilled outside of it, and we hit fairly large. I don't have the drill hole that Jay mentioned that I referred to earlier, but it's a perpendicular to this cross section. The cross section is just like a slice of bread out of a loaf of bread, and it shows that we've got something fairly substantial. We hit it from just above 200 meters, went down 600 meters, and we have what we think is the highest grade porphyry in the Yukon. We haven't hit bornite yet, which is really what makes things exciting, but the grades that we have would be very similar to what a lot of these bornite deposits have. And so what we're going to do to follow up, and we have done, is we've done an IP survey that goes down. Again, the last one was done to 200 meters. We have gone down 1.2 kilometers, and we're just waiting for the final interpretation of that, and that will really define what our targets are. And that's just in that one blue sky area. To show you the magnitude of what this is the 5 mountains, the 3 rivers that are along a 6-kilometer line trend, and the cartoon below that shows what we have. The idea is that there is a very large porphyry underneath it, there's got to be a source for it. A published report was just submitted in December of this year to the Yukon Geological Society that believes in this theory as well. So what we are going to do next year is we are going to drill the Yukon's deepest drill hole into what's obviously the Yukon's richest porphyry. That's the real excitement. And that we think, based on the share price, what we have, it's not too late to get in that excitement, let alone everything else that we have. When I said there's gold everywhere and there's projects all over the place, we're going to focus on the Free Gold Mountain project because we've got those other two. It's really because of the pipeline of projects we have just on our property. There's a lot of historical work. There was, before Triumph Gold acquired the property, there was over 100 years of work done on it, 80 different owners, and what we've been doing is compiling it all together, following up on a lot of drill data that was done previously, and a lot of the placer work that was done. This is one of the examples. It's Irene. That's what we're calling it. It was opened up in 2013 by the placer miners, where they found an epithermal vein 50 feet below surface, and it carried multi-grams over multi-meters, over 140 meters. So this year we've drilled it. We've drilled it 400 meters, still waiting for the final assays on that. And it ties in with old historical work that we've gone through this winter that is 3.7 kilometers long. So if you've got a 3.7 kilometer long vein, if it all comes together, tied in with this drilling, and it ties in with the old drilling that was done in the 1960s that is very similar to what we see now, we think we've got one heck of an exciting story that the market will understand, and very inexpensive to drill, unlike those what we think are going to be 2 kilometer drill holes that we drill underneath blue sky porphyry. I know we're pressed for time. I'll be very quick. Lucite Peak is the project we have in British Columbia. Again, the reason we acquired it was it came up, it's Tony's belief that, based on his PhD, that there was a potential to host a big porphyry system on there. Last year he flew there, looked at it, couldn't find anything that we're really excited, but he grabbed some samples. Samples ran, and so this year we went back and looked at it more and decided to stake all around it, because the samples that we acquired were some of the highest grade samples in all of British Columbia in the last 20 years, where we had 60% copper in samples. Now I know those are samples, but there is not the potential for what we were originally looking for, which was a big porphyry type system or indication for that, but a number of very high grade heated veins or vein systems that go on for I can't tell you exactly how far it is. That's about 2 kilometers, but something we're going to look at in British Columbia. So that's the story. Really appreciate you all coming and sticking around past the 4 o'clock cutoff time, and sorry we cut into everyone's fun out there, but I know Jay's happy that we didn't open the bar 5 minutes ago.